And so there's two famous attempts he made in the Himalayas. One was Chogori, which is K2, which is the second tallest. It's kind of like the Rolling Stones of the Himalayas. That he didn't get that far with that, but it was more or less an all right kind of attempt. He wasn't the leader at that time. Oscar Eisenstein was. Then a couple years later, he wanted to try Himalayas again, and he attempted Kensington, which is the third the tallest mountain in the Himalayas. But it's one of the most dangerous ones. It's not protected. It's kind of out in the open. And so it's subjected to lots of winds, there's lots of avalanches. And actually no one, I don't think either of those, Chogori or Kensington, was actually successfully climbed to the summit until the 50s. You have to remember, Crowley is doing this in 1905. So they didn't have any of the gear that anybody has today. Oxygen tanks, none of that kind of stuff. They had the minimal kind of gear. But he was the leader of this exhibition, and sad to say, it ruined his career as a mountaineer, because basically what happened is that the other members of the party mutinied, from his point of view, rebelled against him because they were upset and sick of the way he was treating the coolies. Excuse me, that's probably not a politically correct word anymore, but that's the first one that came to mind. He was badly treating all of the Sherpas, basically. All the people carrying the packs, he would whip them and all this kind of thing, and he always felt like you have to make them know that the white man is, in control here and all this kind of stuff. But basically, he had a sadistic streak, and he enjoyed inflicting pain on people. And after a while, the other members of the party just got sick of this, and they said, "That's it, we're not doing this anymore." And they decided to, go to give up and go down the mountain. And Crowley had said, "Well, look, I'm telling you, you do what you want to do, but if you go down the mountain now, whatever, I'm telling you, you're running into trouble." And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Crowley was in his tent, he heard these cries for help, and he basically said, "Serves him right." Now, no matter what you think people are doing, no matter what mistake they're doing, if you sort of know in advance that they're going to go down this way and they're going to get into trouble, the idea that later on you could somehow disingenuously say, like, "Well, I didn't know what was going on. I just heard these voices. It could have been anything," which is basically what he said. So instead of being the Superman, which he said he was most of the time, and running out of the tent as soon as he heard, cries for help and saving everyone, he let 3 people die, basically. Or not so much he let 3 people die, he didn't do anything to help. You can say it wasn't his fault. He told them not to do it, but he didn't exhibit himself in any particularly good light in basically not coming to the aid of these people. And not only that, the next morning, he scurried down the mountain as quickly as he could. He wrote several articles, criticizing the whole affair. Story goes, he extracted all the funds that were left from the expedition from the bank and basically hightailed it, back home. So someone who actually was a good mountaineer, if eccentric, it was this kind of attitude he had that ruined it for him. I'm not quite sure how much time I have. But the summit, let's say, or the kind of the destiny, or Crowley's road to Damascus, as it were, happened in Cairo in 1904. I'm sort of jumping around here a great deal. He had by this time married his first wife, and they were on honeymoon. And what had happened is that Rose Kelly started to act in a very strange way, and she started to say all these strange things about the Egyptian god Horus, and a variety of other kind of strange things about Egyptian mythology and religion that she shouldn't have known. She had no interest in any of this kind of stuff. And while they were visiting a museum in Cairo, she saw this image that's in the middle here. It's the stele, which is of Horus, and you have the Egyptian god Nuit, the god of the sky, the night sky, overarching and all that. And she somehow zeroed in on this without, there was no reason why she should have known anything about this whatsoever. And basically the message is that they want to get in touch with you. It's about the child. Horus wants to get in touch with you. And Crowley thought, as he usually did, that she was just off her nut. He didn't grant women too much intelligence or anything like that whatsoever. I didn't grant too many men that much intelligence either, so I don't think he was particularly just, getting on women. But what had happened is that, cut a long story short, over 3 nights, 3 days in Cairo, I think it's the 8th, 9th, and 10th of April, Rose channeled and discarnate intelligence from another dimension named Iwas, or I was, I don't know, I was, those kind of phonetic stuff in there. And it was from Iwas that Crowley received what is known as the Book of the Law. Now, I don't know if this is a picture of Iwas, I couldn't find one exactly, there's some others out there. Crowley got in touch with a few discarnate entities. There was one called Amalantra, there was Abu Aldiz, there was quite a few different ones. That was one of the tenets of his philosophy, was that our job is to get in touch with these other dimensional creatures or beings, and they're going to guide us in all this kind of thing. Or they're going to guide Crowley, and he's going to guide us. But this is the beginning of his ministry, we can say. So just as his father preached the faith of the Plymouth Brethren, Crowley at this point begins to preach the faith of Thelema. And again, this is a Greek word for will. And the one that you probably know you all know about, the phrase that comes out of this is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And when Crowley returned, again, I'm collapsing quite a few things here just to kind of move it along, because Crowley is someone where I sense something is always happening. There's something, I've left out 150 things that have happened between him being in Cairo and him coming here. I can just give you the bare bones of it. That's also a plug for the book, if you really want to know all the ins and outs of it. But he had a rich and interesting life, we can put it that way. And when he came back from receiving the law, he decided to start his own magical organization. So he was going to do the Golden Dawn one better. And he started something that was called the Argentum Astrum, or Argentinium, or I'm mispronouncing it here, but basically means silver star. And there are Crowley scholars who say, no, it doesn't mean that, and there's all these different possibilities of what it might mean. But that's how I understood it. And when I joined it in 1978 in Los Angeles, that's what they called it. My membership dues are way, way, way late and all that, but that was a long time ago. What Crowley started this magical organization, this magical society in London called the Silver Star. And he started to attract quite a few people and quite a few members. One of the things they did was famously, they put on a series of performances of the Rites of Eleusis. They put on a performance of the ancient mystery rites. Now, how they knew the ancient mystery rites, we don't know, because they really are a mystery. That's why we still call them a mystery. We don't exactly know what they did, but we do know that they drank something at the end of it called the kekeon. And many people have debated what that could have been. Some people say it was mushrooms, some people say it was peyote or hashish, whatever. It was something. It was something that revealed the mysteries at the end. At the end of these long kind of festivals and rituals, you drank this stuff and then you had an experience. So Crowley was trying to do something like that. And what he did do is he made up a concoction that had peyote in it. He was one of the early people in England, in the West, to experiment with peyote. He wasn't the first. There are some biographers who claim that he introduced peyote to the West. He didn't. Yeats had it before him. He got him again. And Havelock Ellis, you might remember him. He was a famous sexologist before Freud. He wrote a famous essay where he experimented with peyote, and his room is in the temple. So Crowley wasn't the first, and he certainly didn't introduce Aldous Huxley to mescaline. This was another kind of myth that goes around, that when Crowley and Huxley were both in Berlin during the Weimar years, whooping it up and all that, they introduced Huxley to that. It's just not true. But they did put on these series of performances, and they did have this beverage that people who came to the performances drank. And there's quite a few reports, there's some journalists wrote articles about it, it turns up in a few books and memoirs and all that. So he was kind of doing the Trips festivals, and kind of like Ken Kesey's, pranksters, merry pranksters, quite a bit before. And you can see these pictures of, that's Layla Waddles, she was an Australian who played violin. He loved her violin player, he didn't like her to talk during the rituals because he didn't like her Australian accent. And there's some various different pictures of Crowley and the other people dressed up in the fancy dress doing the rites of Eleusis. Now, just after World War I started, the guns of August started going off, Crowley decided that his destiny lay west. It lay in America. Now, there's a variety of reasons why he may have left. One was that there were a great many unpaid bills and debts and things of that sort following him, and he may very well wanted to get away from them. I'm told I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to do this really quickly. So Crowley went to America. The first thing he did when he got there was he started to, well, I'm skipping out something. In 1912, Crowley discovered that all along what he was doing was sex magic. He was doing the sex, he was doing the magic, then he just put the two together, and whoa, it really worked. And this is at the same time he was approached by members of the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis that Anthony mentioned earlier. And they believed that he had given away their secrets about sex magic. And Crowley said, I had no idea what you're talking about. And then Theodore Roos, who was the emissary, opened his book called The Book of Lies, and he pointed to a page, and he said, it's there. And Crowley twigged, oh, that's what it's about. And so what he did after that was, instead of doing all the ceremonial sort of magic, or not doing it as much, he developed a system of sex magic, basically using the excitement, the intensity of sex, instead of sort of the slower building excitement of ceremonial magic to project his magical will and imagination. But the first thing he did when he got to America, because he was broke, he didn't have a job, he was in his 40s, his leg was killing him, was that he started to perform a series of operations, or opera he called them, with various different prostitutes that he found in New York. And when that wasn't getting him too far, it wasn't getting him work or getting him money or anything like that, he was very happy when he bumped into a journalist that he knew from London named George Vierick, who at the time was working for people who were publishing a magazine called The Fatherland. And its subtitle was Fair Play for Germany and Austria. This was a magazine in America which was yet to enter World War I. And there were a lot of German immigrants in America. And they were basically trying to muster support for the Kaiser in New York. And Crowley had to make a buck. And so he said, I'd work for you and all that. He later said that he took the job because as he was working for British intelligence, and the idea that he was going to write propaganda that was so ludicrous and so unbelievable that, well, first off, the Fatherland would lose, a lot of its readership, and that was a great blow to the Kaiser. And then that actually, people just wouldn't take it seriously and all that. Now, there's a book out that claims that Crowley actually did work for British intelligence and so on and so on. There's a lot of debate about that. If you go to the National Portrait Gallery, from the man who, we'll get to it right after this, from the man who is called, the wickedest man in the world and the man we want to hang. His portrait now hangs in the National Portrait Gallery as one of, Britain's best and brightest. And among the things they say is mountaineer, poet, chess master, spy, and down at the bottom I think it says he was interested in the occult, or something like that. So his kind of, his reputation has gone through quite a bit of a sea change. It's another enantiodromia here. But then Crowley was also made a name for himself in Greenwich Village as a painter. He was in the Greenwich Village kind of bohemian set, the same set that John Reed and Emma Goldman were in prior to the Bolshevik Revolution. If you know that film, Reds, Warren Beatty, where he romanticized himself as John Reed. That's sort of the milieu Crowley was moving in at that time. And I'm going to have to really cut it very close here, sadly. I can only get up to the very next slide. This is Leah Herzig. This is his most loyal, most dedicated, most committed Scarlet woman. Crowley had a string of Scarlet women. These are these mistresses that he had and used in his magical operations. And he met her in New York. They became lovers. She asked him to paint her. He did, and that's the painting, and it's called Dead Souls. I can just do 2 minutes, really quickly, 2 minutes. After leaving New York, Crowley went back to England. He wasn't having a very good time in London. This is when he started his heroin addiction. He had been taking heroin at different times for his asthma, and it was actually prescribed as medicine, along with a variety of other sorts of things, but this is when he really developed his addiction. And again, he's in his 40s by this time. What had happened was that he couldn't find anywhere to live in London, in England, and so he decided he needed better climes. And so long story short, he, Leia, and a few other people got this place in Cefalù, which is not too far from Palermo in Sicily. And it's still there. I think it's in the tourist advertisements now. Last I saw it was up for sale for about €1.5 million to buy this place. But this is where he founded his Abbey of Palermo, and it's the Abbey of Do What Thou Wilt. He clipped that title from Rabelais, who has it in Gargantua and Pantagruel. And that's a picture of Crowley. Leia's there. This is one of the rooms that was uncovered by Alfred Kinsey and Kenneth Anger. Alfred Kinsey, the sexologist, and Kenneth Anger, the avant-garde filmmaker, who went in the 50s to Cefalù and took all the whitewash that Mussolini's people had put over all these paintings that Crowley did on the wall. There were all these weird, erotic, necrophiliac, strange, kinds of paintings, sort of even weirder than the ones that Anthony showed. But this, just funny enough, that's Jane Wolfe, the rather masculine-looking woman there. She was a Hollywood actress. Her best-known role was in Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. And she found her way to the Abbey of Thelema in the 1920s, basically coming for a kind of rest cure, and she wasn't quite sure what she was going to get into. But last bit, this is where there's much more after this, but this is sort of, it's all downhill from here for Aleister. Word gets back of all the sex magic, the bestiality, the drugs, the horrible living conditions at the Abbey. There were no toilets, no one did any cleaning. People ate when they could, and things of that sort. At the same time, Crowley kept up a very, very austere and serious religious practice of the rites and rituals and so on of his philosophy of the Thelema. So at the same time, it was kind of like a real big hippie crash pad. Well, before the day, he was also, trying to carry on this kind of serious promulgation of his philosophy. I'm being told I got to hit the road, folks. So sad, what comes after this is basically he comes back to England, things go downhill, but what happens in the 1960s, he's rediscovered. By who? Oh, come on, who was there? The most famous people in the world put him on the cover of their 1967 album. And he gets picked up by the counterculture, and he hasn't been let go since then. You can see posters of Crowley in the same places where you see posters of Marilyn Monroe or Che Guevara or something like that. And I'm surprised that Andy Warhol didn't do one of those silk screens of him and all that. He's been picked up as a kind of pop culture icon now. And there's more in it, but if you want to know that part of his story, you have to buy my book, which is 1, 2, there it is. Thank you very much.